and players smiling.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jayson Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, and my guest today is Josue Pavon.
What's good, Sherrod? Let's do this, man.
What's going on, Josue? How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. I'm doing all right, man. I guess I didn't do too bad the last time. I got another invite, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, well, we trying to bring in some of our teammates. We trying to be like the Celtics and just make sure we spread the wealth. Bring in teammates.
Yeah. Sherrod went through his whole schedule of people. He was like, I guess I throw him on my phone.
Let's get Peyton Pritchard. I mean, Josue Pavon. Let's get him some minutes. Let's get our Peyton Pritchard in the floor. Get some minutes here.
Get him off the bench. Get him a start real quick.
Let's get him in the rotation. Absolutely. And before we get into it, just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at PrizePicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100, which comes in handy with the NCAA tournament in full bloom. And everyone, including myself, has already had their bracket not busted, but smashed up a little bit.
Smashed up, right?
I tell you who knows a thing about smashing up is the Boston Celtics, who seem to be smashing up anyone and everyone that stands in their way between them and that Larry O'Brien trophy. Celtics won 7 in a row. Most recent victory came over the Milwaukee Bucks, a game that you felt good about the Celtics winning going into it. Knowing that Giannis wasn't going to play, you felt really good about their chances of winning that game. And for the most part, they controlled the action. I think they led by as many as 21 points in that game. But then it got a little dicey at the end, and the Celtics had to get basically a late fourth quarter Jayson Tatum, top 5 Jayson Tatum performance where he had some free throws and buckets down the stretch that they needed. They got a couple of good stops, and he wound up winning by 3. But Josue, here's my thing. It made me a little uncomfortable that they were having that much trouble with, like, basically the B+/B Milwaukee Bucks, because that's what they are without Giannis. Yeah, and I'm just curious, how did you feel about that game being a little bit close for comfort?
You know, Sherrod, down the stretch, I felt good about it because, I mean, we talked about it during the Celtics post-game show. Tatum going to the rack, dominant, that no one's going to stop me. I got to close this thing out, Tatum. You felt good. Like, all right, they're going to close this thing out. But Lillard's got another say in this. You know what I mean? So you thought to yourself, maybe we get some overtime, but you were hoping the Celtics, because of what was going on throughout the entire season in terms of giving up a bunch of leads, let's just say, right? Even if some of them did end up being victorious, some of them were ugly, right? And also the losses as well. So I feel good about it because I just think when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks situation and what's been going on since the All-Star break and Doc Rivers coming in there and trying to pretty much go on a run here until the end of the season, it's a tough spot for them. And so I think these guys are motivated, though. I think they came into this game saying, okay, no Giannis, we still got this. The Celtics going to take us lightly. And I think when you have someone else like Bobby Portis in the mix like that in the second half, that really helped them. I think that was really inspiring for these guys. I think they really needed this one. If you're Doc Rivers, outside of the win, you take it because you say, look, this is how close we were. And we didn't have Giannis. And, to mention Peyton Pritchard in the postgame press conference, you don't think he's in the locker room saying to these guys, it was just Peyton Pritchard having a great game in that first half. Outside of that, that deficit, it wouldn't have been that steep if Pritchard didn't go off the way he did, And I think just that type of stuff really helps this team when you think about their delicate mental state. It has to be, even Damian Lillard, let's face it, he's not having that much fun this year, regardless of the stats and the All-Star game, MVP and all that. Like, it's been a really, really tough transition. So again, man, like we were talking about it on the show, the Bucks needed this way more than the Celtics, man. And they got it. It's weird because they lost, but I feel like they got it because they got that ounce of confidence and that ounce of motivation moving forward. But in terms of matching up with the Celtics, though, it doesn't change my opinion. I still think that Celtics are heavily favored, or at least the way I see it, matchup-wise. And I don't – what happened in that game doesn't really change my mind a whole lot. But I do think to myself, okay, look out for the Bucks. That would be a great series.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that particular game, and the way it ended is, I think you have to pause for a moment and just say, was that just a simple case of the Celtics letting up off the gas pedal a little bit, or
Yeah.
do we need to take a look under the hood and see if there's more than just them letting up off the gas for this one? And the thing that jumped out to me about that game, and it was something that in the grand scheme of the outcome really didn't matter that much, but it reinforced why I believe the Celtics will beat Milwaukee if they meet in the best of seven. Early in the game, they went to whoever Damian Lillard was matched up with. And when they didn't go at him, they went at Beasley. And when these two meet in the playoffs, that ain't going to change.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a more defensively challenged starting backcourt in the NBA than Damian Lillard and Beasley. And the real reason more than anything else is because they're both undersized for their position. I mean, Dame Lillard is a shooting guard in a undersized point guard's body. And Beasley is an off guard who more nights is off, period. And he's the guy that you want guarding you. He's the off guard. He's the guy that you know is off guards trying to guard somebody that he can't guard. And if he's not making shots, he's useless. And that's really, to be frank, that's what Milwaukee needed. They needed him to actually make some shots. I think he was like 2 for 8, 2 for 9, something like that. And he can't be that bad and then to have any shot of knocking off the Celtics. So I think that it was a moment to pause and just make sure that what we saw was just kind of a one-off type thing. But I'm not concerned either, Josue, about the Celtics at this being something that's, symptomatic of them maybe, falling off. And we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but motivation's got to be hard for the Celtics to have at this point when you've got such a fat cushion over anyone and everyone that you play, to where every game your opponent needs to win far more than you do. And while we're on the subject of winning and opponents and things like that, one of the reasons why I think a lot of these games are a little bit close is because Joe Mazzulla is basically looking at some crazy ass combinations every now and then that we know we ain't going to see in the playoffs, but it's worth, I guess, giving it a trial run now. What's your take of how Joe has been kind of dispersing the minutes the last few games? Because really, it's clear as day that the Celtics are going to wind up with the best record in the NBA. And Joe is doing what I think any coach would try to do, and that's balance trying to keep his guys healthy with trying to give guys some rest, with trying to look at some combinations that fall in case of an emergency, I need to play him. That's I'm just curious. What's your take on how Joe has kind of handled the minutes the last few games with his players?
I love it, Sherrod. It's like, hey, we're all in this together. I mean, we're all going to have a spot here. We're all going to have an opportunity. Maybe it's towards the tail end of the regular season, but shit, everyone's going to be confident going into the playoffs saying, hey, if my number's called, if my name's called, let's go. I'm ready. I got the reps in. I know how to do things on the defensive end of the floor and on the offensive end of the floor. I think that's a lot of the reason why these guys are getting those opportunities. I mean, we talked about earlier the guys who didn't necessarily get a whole lot of opportunity, and Banton and Lamar Stevens and all that. But I think when you look at the overall picture, I mean, Mazzulla was just trying to see what everyone has, trying to test everybody out in different spots. These guys got starts here and there. They got opportunities where people didn't really see it coming. You know what I mean? So I just think Mazzulla is always open for those new ideas. But when you're in this great spot, this unique spot that I've never seen a team in, 11-game lead in the Eastern Conference, this is the time to do stuff like that, to get guys like Pritchard, not only his reps, but get him in spots where he's going to take on a lot more responsibility, getting the start and putting him in situations that necessarily could really win you a game in the playoffs. And Luke Cornett, I just think those two guys really stand out the most because they've been getting minutes. They've been grabbing those opportunities, making the most of it for sure. I mean, easily their best seasons, respectively, throughout. However, getting those extra spots, the starting opportunities, the chances to really, get into the game and have to make those decisions that really alter how the game goes, I think is huge. And I think a lot of that has to do with Joe Mazzulla just slowly building that confidence. So it kind of starts from the top and just trickles down. And it just, we've seen so many signs of all these guys like 1 through 12 just dialed in and just productive on both ends whenever they get their opportunities.
Yeah, and when you talk about Joe Mazzulla and he, it's kind of, we laugh it off, but the whole Joe Mazzulla, the shot blocker, and how now apparently someone has told him that you don't do that anymore, Coach.
That was Brad. It was probably Brad. I'm not trying to say like I heard something, but if I had to guess, it was probably someone from the Celtics. Like, hey, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. It's funny though. I just think it kind of goes in with the message, right? Hey, we're all in this together. Hey, that's a rule that it applies for me as well. I'm not letting anyone get a free shot off.
You know what though? Like when I first saw that with the what's his name the Royce was the first
Royce
guy that with the video where he's like contesting the shot.
Yeah.
I understand that part of the thinking is a health and safety concern. Like, what if Joe Mazzulla's out there, tries to block this dude's shot, and that dude comes down on Joe's foot, and he has an ankle injury, and he's out for weeks? Then we like, oh, damn. Joe might be suspended for like the
absolutely,
whole
man. NBA's gonna call the Celtics to be like, why was that man doing that?
Exactly,
like, this is how you let your coaches run wild. Yeah, definitely.
Because I think a lot of it has to do with just liability concerns. But here's the thing that I kind of look at with that. Okay, Joe, bad Joe, don't do that anymore. But part of the thinking that I think Joe Mazzulla has, and it just makes sense, is that he wants his players to understand that every minute you are on the floor, even during damn timeouts, you ain't letting up. We talked about this, on the Big Three NBA podcast earlier with Gary Washburn and Kwame Lunis. We talked about this earlier about how, you go back to when Kevin Garnett was a Celtic and how Kevin Garnett was.
I was just going to ask you, Sherrod, who do you think started this? Yeah,
Kevin Garnett was kind of the guy that really made that, when a timeout is called and the guy's trying to get his shot off, right before or right after the timeout is called. Right. Kevin was that guy who was sitting in like 3 rows back. And, people used to think, oh, that's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. When you're dealing with a team and a guy misses like 6 or 7 out of like 9 shots, that one shot during that timeout that he's trying to, that could be the one to get him going. How many times have we seen guys miss like 7, 8, 9, 10 shots and they get fouled, they go to the free throw line, they knock down 2 free throws. Next thing you know, they knock down 4 straight field goals. And you look back and how did they get back on track? They got some shots with no one contesting them. And I understand what Joe Mazzulla is doing. He's trying to say, look, we are not letting up. I want my players to understand that there's no let up. And I get it, but he can't do that. He just can't do that because I'm thinking about this from like Joe or Jane fan watching my team play the Celtics and seeing Coach Mazzulla trying to contest a shot of my second best player who we're going to need this home stretch as we try to get our playoff position together. I'm concerned that Joe might foul him.
Yeah.
And let's be real. And again, I did my homework on this. I did what I call my Gary Washburn hood homework on this. I looked up Joe Mazzulla's numbers when he was at West Virginia. He had 7 block shots in his career at West Virginia. So we're
man.
So we're not talking about Derek White.
Yeah,
we ain't talking about Derek White guards blocking everybody's shot. We talking about just a dude who got like basically 1.5 blocks, a little more than that, 1.8 blocks per year. Not a game, not a month, per year. So maybe Joe was living out some of that, man, I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I could block shots. Maybe some of that's going on. But I love the fact that Joe is he's trying to set the tone. Like, look, we ain't letting up. I don't care if we up by 27 points and you're just called the timeout. I ain't trying to let you get no shot at getting into a shot-making rhythm. Much respect to Joe for that.
Absolutely, man. I love the CeeLo reference. Skilo? Skilo is that guy's name, right? That's real ones.
That's why
Joe. You know. You know. Great reference. Exactly. Yeah, man. Like he was that scrapper too as a player. So it transcends. As a head coach, you're gonna actually be that same guy, especially in the locker room. And look, I just that's really what it boils down to, though. It's like, if someone gets hurt, you know what I mean? Like, or shoot, if you motivate the other team in a way, I don't know. That's another way to look at it too. Like, imagine if KG was on the other end of that, you know what I mean? And maybe he's not the one that someone's trying to block his shot, but he just sees one of his teammates and the head coach doing it. Like, imagine it, like that could stir something, and then you could put your team in a disadvantage. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, if I didn't do that, there's a lot of moving parts, I guess. But it's just funny because I've never seen a head coach do anything like that. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, like this is going to be talked about. but it's also going to be mentioned by either the NBA or the Celtics in a one-on-one with Joe Mazzulla. I never thought it would result in a fine or anything like that, but I was like, they're going to be like, hey, Joe, don't do that again. And we're not going to know about it. And that's how I thought the whole thing was going to play out. Like, Joe's going to get that message. He won't be asked about it again. And, we'll just move on. It won't be anything that's announced or anything, but we'll never see him do that again. And then for him to go on the radio, and which was a very lighthearted conversation, by the way. Did you hear that conversation? I've never heard Joe like that. I was like, oh, okay, Joe. You're joking around. He put a real laugh in there. It wasn't those like scoffs or like those fake laughs that he gives Gary. You know what I mean? They're sarcastic, like, you know what I mean? It was like genuine Joe. I was like, okay, maybe it's the way his team playing. He's just feeling good right now. He spoke to Cedric Maxwell recently, just talking about championships and all that. So maybe he's seen the light, so to speak, or I don't know what it is, but hey, I like it, man. I like this side of Joe.
Genuine Joe. Yeah, I like that.
Genuine Joe, exactly.
Exactly. The thing about him now, I think he's understanding that, you know what we're doing, it's important, but I need to just relax and just let things play out the way they're gonna play out.
Absolutely, man.
You can't if you're Joe Mazzulla, you're like, look, you can't hate on me at all now. Not only do my team have the best record, we are like lapping kids. We're damn near lapping. I mean, think about it. The first three opponents that they're going to play on this upcoming road trip, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, average, like 28, 29 wins each. Damn near, they have nearly twice as many wins as the teams that they're playing this weekend average this season. And the thing that I am liking more and more about Joe is he's just figuring out how to be Joe. I think his first year, looking at the circumstances from which he ascended to the head coaching position, looking at all the different issues that he had to deal with and he had to address without having any real playbook to work from on how to address them. I mean, it's one thing if you're like a college coach like Brad was and you're at Butler and you got to deal with drama with the Celtics and players. You coached as a head. You are already a head coach, so you have some idea of what you want to do. Whether you can do it or not is another story, but you got some idea what you want to do. When you're an assistant coach, you are, a staff sergeant. You're a soldier. You're the one who is implementing the orders that were given to you. You're not the one that's setting the tone per se as what others are going to do. And so I think it took him a little bit of time to figure out how he can do that, how he can be effective, and maybe most important, and this doesn't get enough attention with Joe, how do you be consistent with your leadership? Because there's in the years that I've been covering the NBA, the one thing that pisses players off is the coaches that are like, they're like, player coach one day, dictator the next. It's just like, damn, pick one. Because if you're a straight up dictator, I mean, we can work with that because I know what I'm getting. And if you're a player's coach, we can work with that. But when you flip the switch from go back and forth, and there's no rhyme or reason as to why you do that, players hate that. That's why a lot of coaches who are really good don't have jobs because players in ownership and management, they're not trying to hear that.
Hello everyone, this is Sherrod Blakely, part of the CLNS Media Network, and I wanted to tell you about one of our friends, PrizePicks. It's the largest DFS, that's daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill or comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks is really simple to play. You can make your picks, submit your entries, and do this in less than 60 seconds. Yes, that's right, less than 60 seconds. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Who doesn't love Taco Tuesday? Every Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. PrizePicks also offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account as we count down these final weeks until the NBA playoffs start. As a longtime fantasy league player myself, PrizePicks is the perfect what's next to satisfy my fantasy league itch. You want in too? Here's what you have to do. First, you got to go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. So, that being said, you get a chance to pick more, you can pick less. It's that easy.
But I wanted to touch on before we talk about the upcoming road trip. I wanted to jump into something that and this is the Kwani Lunis creation. I'm gonna give shout out to Kwani Lunis, co-host.
Yo, shout out to Kwani.
Yeah, but she's created this segment, and we just stumbled upon it, and we're gonna do. I'm gonna do it every single week because it's just hysterical. It's called Catching Up with the Exes.
Okay.
Checking in on what former Celtics are doing, and I wanted to talk to you about our guy.
I like
Jayson
that.
Tatum.
That's good. Yeah, that's so Kwani. There you go. Kwani's so creative.
I want to talk to you about our boy IT. And he's with Phoenix now. And full disclosure, we talked on one of our earlier episodes. We talked about IT and hoping that when he did the G League thing, we were like, man, he should get a shot with somebody.
Yeah,
and he's getting that with Phoenix. His first game, he played like maybe 2 minutes, had an assist, missed a shot. But what are you hoping to see from Isaiah Thomas in this latest NBA comeback?
I hope he has a role, Sherrod. And I think with this Suns team, he has a shot. I mean, maybe this is the tail end of the rotation, but that would be a great thing to see, man. Like that was the whole thing with me in the Celtics talk. All right, like a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was, like when everyone's starting to, here we go again. Maybe they should call him. They got that last spot. I'm like, he's not gonna play.
Right.
And it's funny because I had this conversation with Gary. He was really into it. Gary gets sometimes when he really, passionate about something, and he's like, man, but just to get that ride, that experience, to win a championship, I'm like, man, that would be cool. But like, I want to see him play because he still has it. And I think that's a cooler story. You know what I mean? Okay, if they don't win the championship, the Suns, let's say they get to the Western Conference Finals, man. But to watch him in the playoffs again, man, maybe we get one of these. Like, that's what I want to see. And I just never saw that type of spot here on the Celtics. I just don't. They're just, the backcourt's crowded, and it's a good reason. It's not something that you look at and say, oh, well, if someone goes down, you throw them right in there. It's like, they got reserves, So I just think, as playmakers, et cetera, like, I just think that the Celtics, it would have been really tough for him to kind of latch on to a spot there in that rotation. And then the inevitable, and that's another part of this thing. And when we're talking about Isaiah possibly going back to Boston, we have to see him walk away from Boston again. You know what I mean? And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the last. But I just wouldn't like that story compared to what we're seeing now. I love this. As soon as I heard the Phoenix Suns, I said he's got a shot. So hopefully that's how this ends. But I'm so happy for IT, man. As someone who was first starting out, covering the Celtics. It was the IT era, and it was an incredible ride. Maybe I'm a little biased in a way, but as a journalist, man, like you remember, man, like the conversations, the one-on-ones. Isaiah was such a, someone that you sort of cheered for, and I'm still doing it now. So I'm so happy for him, man. Talking about, or at least from reports that I've heard from people, turning down contracts overseas. Like, he was just really determined on doing this. And I love that for him, because that's something that could be in this next chapter. Maybe in a couple of years, that's something we see him do, balling out overseas, seeing some 40-point, 50-point highlight reel, and we're like, oh, there he goes again. Like, that would be cool too. But like, I want to see him make this return. I want to see this official, and hopefully that happens in Phoenix.
I can't wait for the movie. Because to me,
yeah, man,
his
for
life
real.
really should.
Yeah.
When you look at the things that he has gone through, the things that he has overcome, the issues that he has had to deal with, I don't know how you wouldn't see this as a blockbuster Hollywood movie at some point. And the cool part for me is that there's still chapters yet to be written.
Exactly.
Phoenix, when you look at the Western Conference playoff situation right now, the Suns are like, I think they're in 7th place, but they're only 3 games out of being in 4th place. So they could conceivably go on a late season surge and wind up with home court advantage. Or, to me, if they don't necessarily move significantly up, you look at the teams near the top when you talk about Oklahoma City Thunder, you talk about the Timberwolves. Those are 2 teams that in a best of 7 series, I wouldn't be shocked if Phoenix beat them. And it's not because I think Phoenix is a better team. I just think that both of those teams are really young. And when you add a guy like Isaiah Thomas to the mix, and you're not looking for him to go out there and play 20, 25, 30 minutes a game, but he's still good enough right now where you put him out there for 8, 9 minutes, he could get you like 7, 8 points. And that could be the difference between you winning 2 games at home and 1 on the road and position yourself to go to the next round versus being down 3-1. I think he has that X factor to him for the Phoenix Suns that makes them a team that if you see them first round, I don't really know if you really want that smoke.
Exactly.
Because
yeah,
you're dealing with a guy who understands that there's a certain sense of urgency that you have to have this time of year. And for someone who has been on the outside of the NBA looking in for as long as he has, you better believe his sense of urgency is going to be a little bit more ramped up. And to me, between now and the playoffs for Phoenix, it's a matter of getting him in game shape so that he can play 10, 15 minutes a night. If you can get 10, 15 minutes out of him every night, you're going to have a chance to be very, very good. And we all know there's certain nights where IT won't miss. IT start hitting them shots that he has no business hitting, but they go down. Then you say, okay, we might need him for 20 minutes a night because clearly he got it going on in a way. And you look, and again, you look at the players that Phoenix has as their core. I mean, think about it. You got Bill, you got KD, you got Book. I mean, that's like 75 points right there.
Right.
And if you can get a cat who also has the ability to score at a high clip instantly and quickly, it makes them a dangerous team. Because now the one thing that we've been knocking Phoenix for all season long was that they didn't have much depth to them. They didn't have another impact scorer outside of their big 3. If Isaiah Thomas go out there and score 20 points on any given night, no one will be surprised because we've seen him do it many, many times. And this is a player who has shown that when you put him in situations where he gets to play with that chip on his shoulder, he can be pretty damn special. Pretty damn special.
Just give him that spot, give him that shot. And this is it, man. All that. That's what I was going to say. I was going to, the roster, like you look around, he's like, man, there's Bradley Beal, it's Kevin Durant, guys that he was in the mix with. Let's face it, that year MVP, the MVP candidate season when he was putting up 29 a night, like he was putting up those type of numbers. And I'm not saying that that's what we're going to see now, but like, man, like how does that not going to motivate someone like Isaiah Thomas as if he doesn't? Someone who doesn't need that type of motivation, but he already has that. So I really love the situation for him, man. Like even if he were to turn in one of those guys that during that run to the finals, like a Cameron Payne or whatever, like some of those games where he went off for like 18, 20 or went off in the second half with 13 points. You don't think IT can do that? So this is a great, not only a great opportunity for Isaiah Thomas, but if you're the Phoenix Suns, you're like, man, that could really happen. That could be the difference between winning a game in the playoffs. If it's seeing someone like IT come off the bench and just go off like that.
Absolutely. And so we're going to move on from the X's and on to the Nexus, as in the next games on the Celtics.
As everyone should do. All right.
Exactly. You got to move on from the X's. You can still have love for them, but you got to move on.
You got to move on. Exactly. Well put, Gerard. There you go.
So Celtics' next 6 games are on the road, as we talked about at the top of the show. And they could have that number 1 seed locked up by the end of this weekend, which is crazy. Digging deeper into the numbers, the Celtics can basically go 500 the rest of the way, which I don't expect to happen. But if they did, they would still finish with one of the top 5, top 6 all-time records for a single season Boston Celtics history, which is crazy. But at some point, you got to look at who are you basically putting on ice and who are you going to just basically get out there and hope that you can win a game here and there, but you're really just trying to run out the clock and get to the playoffs at this point. Who among their core group are you looking to put on ice more than anyone else?
Jayson Tatum.
Wow, Tatum.
You gotta get his rest in, Sherrod. You gotta get his rest in. This is another deep playoff run. Okay, so they didn't make the finals last year, but that's still a deep playoff run. And let's not forget how it happened, how it ended for Tatum specifically. And look, throughout the season, there's certain spots where he just looks tired sometimes, man. He really does. So look, I think this would be a great opportunity to just rest Tatum, get the other guys going. I want to see more of this Pritchard and Cornette and who's gonna be coming off the bench for Tatum most of the time. throughout the playoffs. Anyone and guys who could be lined up for those secondary minutes, get them going. Jalen as well. I want to see some rest there as well. Is Drew going to be 100% going to or at least close to it going into the postseason? So I think you might see him rest as get some games off too. But yeah, if you talk about the top guys, it's Tatum. It's Tatum, man. Get him some rest. Get him nice and mentally prepared. Obviously, because I don't think that part is gonna. It's not like he's gonna get rusty. So I just think this is the time, man. It's time. It's time. No more MVP talk. It's in the rearview mirror. It's time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I want to not agree with you, but I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say you seem surprised, but look,
I really want to.
Those minutes add up, man. Those minutes add up. He's had a lot of these deep playoff runs.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Josue, is that I look at a guy like Jaylen Brown, for example, and I can sit JB, I can play JB. When the lights go on, he gonna play. He's going to give me pretty much the same, regardless of whether he gets rest or not. I mean, I look back at the game that they lost in Denver, where JB showed up in a big way. Tatum did not. I think mental fatigue probably had a little bit to do with Tatum's off night. But to your point, he's the one guy that you're depending on who doesn't really get downtime. I mean, they've done a great job, I think, all season long with Porzingis and Al. Drew Holiday is now starting to get a little bit of that load management type rest. JB is Jalen is just going to do what Jalen do. I'm not worried about him being mentally fatigued or physically fatigued. He's that dude. But Tatum is the one guy that really hasn't had a chance to just kind of, decompress. And I get Tatum he's probably the one guy who bitch and moan more than anyone else.
He doesn't want to, right? That's the problem. They gotta force his hand, right?
Right. I mean, this the same dude who's just like, listen, I want to play on those Tuesdays in Charlotte, because people come to see me play. But at the same point, your fans came to see you help win a championship. And you got to start giving that a little bit more thought than just, being out there against the Detroit Pistons for a couple games where you're going to drop 25 by half. And if you're going to play him, I think that the compromise is to do the first half joint where he'll play the first 2 quarters and won't play in the second half. Or you'll play him reduced minutes and maybe augment the minutes that he would normally play with getting Sam Hauser out there or getting someone else in the mix. But find ways to get him rest, either keeping him off the court entirely or cutting back his minutes and being transparent about it. And that's the thing about Joe Mazzulla that I think the genuine Joe Mazzulla is going to be with us. He's just going to be like, we're getting into the playoffs, and I want to take a look at lots of different combinations, but I also want to make sure our main guys get some rest, and this is a way to do that. Giving Tatum, cutting his minutes back to around 25 or so a game, and which means you're going to see more Sam Hausers and Peyton Pritchard and those types. And to me, as a Celtics fan, you're thinking that makes sense. That's kind of what I want. I want to see a little bit of Tatum to remind me of how great he is, but I need to see the full, unedited, just the full throttle, all in that dude, top 5 Tatum.
Exactly, man.
Beginning in the middle of April. Between now and the middle of April, give me a little, get the Tatum poo-poo platter. A little this, little that. The entree, save the Tatum entree for the playoffs. That's what fans want at this point.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. You look back at the 08 Celtics, and man, just remember how they started that playoff series. I mean, I know it went 7 games, but they just looked like they were just. And Doc got those guys their rest, especially around this time of the year. And like you said too, it could be that as well. You play the first half, and then that's it. Almost treating like a preseason game for Tatum sometimes. But guys like Hauser, you got other people who I feel like could benefit more from these reps, from these games, especially you're playing some of these guys, some of these teams that are just gonna, it should be a W, and if it's not, then maybe that's not the worst thing in the world for some of these guys who can get that experience down the stretch. Maybe it's a close game and Hauser has to hit the game winner, that's a great spot for him because maybe he needs to hit a couple of those throughout the playoffs. So I think when you look at teams of the past, championship teams, or at least teams that have had to go a couple of runs to get to the finals, sometimes we overlook how long a playoff run is. 25 plus games, and depending on how many times you go 7 or how long those first couple of rounds go. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of rest. Sometimes they got to, man, there's not a whole lot of rest for us. Remember, like imagine the players that have to go out there and play. Like, man, it's exhausting, man. That 2022 file, like, look, it was a heck of a run. It was an incredible experience. My first time ever going to the NBA Finals, but man, by Game 6, your boy was tired, Sherrod, traveling back and forth to Cali and all that. So I just think you have to, because they've done it so many times, that experience mentally is important too. But physically, I think it's just as important as well for these guys. They're not near 30. I know these aren't the same type of players in terms of like the Pierces and the Garnetts and the Ray Allens and where they were in their stages of their career. But I just still think it's important when you think about the consecutive deep playoff runs. Like that's the part that I think is it's really, you know, you just don't want to look at this team in June and being like, man, Tatum looks tired in Game 6. You know, and then all of a sudden that's the narrative. Like, oh man, these guys just, or, you know, they were mentally fatigued, you know, and made some really, really bad mistakes when things matter the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know,
for folks who want to catch some of your content, Josue, where can they go?
Oh man, check me out on Twitter, Joe_Sway. Of course, follow the Cedric Maxwell podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. All right, if you're an iPhone guy, you know, Apple or whatever, we're everywhere. Spotify, man, it's been really fun this year. Obviously because of the way the Celtics been playing, but with Max and his insight and stuff, it's only going to get any better, man. Especially our guests. We got a lot of surprise guests coming up as well. So yeah, check me out there, of course, and of course CLNS Media after every single game on YouTube. One of many of the personalities on the Celtics post-game show.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, folks, download this latest episode of the Big Three NBA podcast from your favorite podcasting app. And also one last shout out to our people, Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Josue, well done, my friend. We'll have to get you on before we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, man, let's do it. This is fun, Sherrod.
Try to get a little Peyton Pritchard, Josue action in here.
Put me in. You know, Drew needs rest, man. Get Pritchard a couple more starts.
Talk a little bit more about Genuine Joe as we get closer to the meat of the season, which is the playoffs. So
right.
For Josue Pavon, Sherrod Blakely, this is the Big Three NBA podcast. We out.